listeners. Welcome to our webinar. We are just coming up at 8 o'clock, or sorry, 7 o'clock Central. So I'm going to give everyone just a minute or two more to join. Looks like we've got quite a few people still joining. If you have an opportunity, just drop your name and your booster club in the chat and what type of booster club you are. So that gives everyone a chance to ask questions and collaborate during the webinar. Feel free to use the chat to collaborate and talk amongst yourselves and ask any questions that you have along the way. So we'll get started here in just a moment. And also, where you're from. Let us know what city and state. We've got a lot of people from around the country who join our webinars, so we love to hear where everybody's from. I'm from Austin, Texas, just outside of Austin. Give about 30 more seconds here to get started. Hi, Sal from New Jersey. I'm Bob from Phoenix. Heather from Denver. Welcome. Sal, I've got a good friend that lives in Nutley, New Jersey. So I think of him every time I see your name. Welcome, Nikki and Dow from Richmond, Texas. Glad to have you both. Tonight, we're going to dive into fundraising, and I like to do this particular webinar just a little different. Usually, when we talk about fundraising, we're really hyper focused on certain types. So, on this one, we take a step back and we look at various types of fundraisers, determine which ones have the best return on investment. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the ones that do, we'll dive in a little bit as to how you can maximize the results on those. So, I think it's important because you get really bombarded with fundraising activities. You can do anything from a car wash to a textathon to a sell chocolate to a mattress fundraiser to hosting a big event. And I think breaking down each one of those and understanding how they work, what makes them successful, and again, what your return on investment is really important. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. If anybody has any questions related to that. If you've done a recent fundraiser that's been good or bad, drop it in the chat and let us know, and we'll talk about that and see if we can bring it up in discussion tonight. So, if you've been on our webinars before, I love to have everyone collaborate with other boosters. You don't get an opportunity very often to chat with other boosters. And so our webinars are a good place to do so. And love for you to ask questions in the chat. We do have a special offer at the end of the webinar tonight for those who are not Booster Hub subscribers yet. So we'll get started. One of my famous quotes is, "We did a fundraiser that cost the program more than we raised." And I put a little asterisk there tonight to talk about what do volunteer hours cost you? So that's an important thing to think about. But I actually ran a fundraiser for a booster club. This was early on in my booster career, and we actually cost the program more than we raised. We came out ahead with money, but we would have been better off to just donate to the program because of all the man hours that were involved in planning the event. So this was specifically an event, and by the time we got all the costs of the event and then the money raised at the event, was not quite as successful as we wanted. The planners behind the event were the biggest donors, and so if we would have just donated, we would have come out ahead on the fundraiser. So that was one of the things brought to light to me that, hey, maybe this is not the type of fundraising we should be doing. And so that's where we'll dive in tonight. So we'll talk about identifying the best fundraising method, how to implement each type, and how to maximize those results. So when we look at the current fundraising landscape, the biggest thing I think to be concerned about is donor fatigue. So, you have a season for your booster club, whatever it is. If you're a sport, you've got your fall season or your winter or your spring. If you're a marching band, maybe it's year round. But you only have so much like currency to get your donors donor currencies where you can ask them to donate to your program, and you have a limited amount. So if you're always asking, always asking, always asking, your donors get fatigued and they'll slow down and they'll stop participating. So you really need to plan ahead and like plan a calendar and say, okay, we're going to do one or two really big fundraisers, and then maybe we'll do one or two sprinkled throughout the season that we don't have to promote a lot to help keep your donors from getting exhausted. You've got competition, whether it's from your own program, your own school, or even other nonprofits. People get bombarded with GoFundMe's every day. There's always somebody in the community that needs help. And so you're competing with a lot more than just your booster club with your donors. So you need to think about that. You've got limited volunteer resources in that your volunteers, you who are running things, you only have so much time to put in to communicate the needs and get the hype built about the fundraiser and then get people to participate. And then of course our program costs are rising, so we need to fundraise now more than ever. The good news is more than $2 billion a year is raised by school support organizations, including booster clubs, mostly booster clubs. So there's a ton of money being given. So you just have to win the fight. You have to be up there, be the loudest, have the most exciting thing to donate to, and capture that money for your program. And the success really boils down to the timing, the method, the type of fundraiser that you choose, and how you execute it. So I usually break fundraising down into three things: events, product sales, and then what are called peer-to-peer fundraisers. These are the ones where your students get their own donation page and reach out to people and get them to donate to your program. So sometimes also known as like a textathon or a callathon, or think about the old days where we had the like telethons on TV, something like that. That's basically what these are. And they're all a little bit different in how they work, and they all can raise various amounts of money and require various levels of work. So we'll dive in to start with event fundraising. So a lot of our programs have an event like a season kickoff dinner or a themed event, a gala, an auction, a casino night, or perhaps like a tournament, a competition, or a concert. And these are great because these go well with what your booster club does. If you're for the volleyball team or the football team or the band and you do a season kickoff dinner, you're getting people excited about what you're doing this season. You're raising some money for the program. So it's a really good fundraiser and it helps build the spirit and build your community. So your event fundraising you're going to want to use when you have also the need to build the community, raise excitement, for the program, get things kicked off. When you have a lot of volunteers, so if you have a big program and you can make a lot of committees, events will be a lot easier because you can have an auction committee and a decoration committee and a promotion committee, and you can spread that work across various committees. If you need, high visibility, you're trying to raise awareness for your program. Perhaps you're, looking at an award-winning season and you really want to celebrate that. Or you have tradition. So I know a lot of our sports here locally, they have a meet the team night, and it's tradition to have that. It's a great night for the students. It's a great night for the program. And so that's when you'll typically use these event fundraisers. It is really hard to add an event from scratch. If it's something that you haven't already done, it takes a lot more execution time and power and manpower to get it done. So always be cautious if you're like, hey, let's have a golf tournament. Well, if you did a golf tournament last year and you have that framework already and you can just add on it, it may be a good idea. If you're building it from scratch, it's going to be a really big project and it could fail. So that's why I caution on events. So the things you want to look at for event fundraisers are your success metrics, the net profit of the event, not just, hey, we raised $22,000, but our cost from the event were 19,000 and it took volunteers 50 hours. Well, I wouldn't consider that event success. And then did we get the community involved? So sometimes it's not about the money. It's about getting a lot of people involved or, making them aware of the program where maybe you're going to do a secondary fundraiser. So you may have that metric. And then you also want to look like if we did this event last year, did we do better? Did we grow? Did we improve things? Did we reduce costs? Something like that. So that's going to be your event metrics for event fundraisers. And we'll break this down into, I like to look at the strategic, the numbers. So this is just an event-based fundraiser, and I am going to give you a link at the end to these calculators so you can use them. But here we can approximate our ticket sales, sponsorships, if we're going to do an auction or a raffle, how much we might raise there, our estimated, and then our expense projections, and then we can see our net profit. And then I like to do a profit per volunteer hour. So you can kind of see, okay, this is how much time it took to put this together, and this was the result per hour. And if you're getting, more than $50 an hour, it's really good efficiency, and that means it's probably a fundraiser worth doing. A lot of times this is what we estimate, and then our actual numbers look a little bit different. So this kind of shows you those two things. Hey, we were hoping for this. We still did this, which is still a pretty good fundraiser, but it certainly wasn't our result. So it'll help you, make sure you're watching those expenses. You're trying to maximize that, the sponsorships, the auctions, the things like that that can really push an event over the top. And even just ticket sales. A lot of times we estimate ticket sales a little high. So you want to be realistic on those because they're generally, 50, 60% of what we estimate. So this is a great way to kind of plan. You want to plan for it before the event, and then after the event, take a look and see how you actually did. And then you can determine, hey, is this a good idea to do this again next year? Or perhaps we should look for a cheaper venue or, use a lower cost food or something like that. But it really gives you a good idea of how your event performed. Some strategies for successful event fundraising. First of all, is form a committee. I recommend this a lot on any type of fundraising or event or anything like that, is to have a committee that's dedicated to that event, because a lot of times the booster board is so busy on so many fronts that if you're also trying to do an event, you can get distracted. So if you have a committee just dedicated to the event, that's really helpful. Do an event calendar, plan it out. This is the date of the event. Here's all the things that we need to accomplish by and the dates. Set a strategic date. So don't set your event when a whole bunch of other fundraising is going on. We find in general fundraisers that are run in August for booster clubs always do better than any other time of the year. Even if you're a later in the year sport, people get excited about back to school. I don't know why, but they should give less in August because they're giving to everything. But something to think about when you're planning an event. Make specific volunteer roles. So in addition to the committee, I like to have a person who's in charge of decorations, a person who's in charge of food and beverage or auction items or those kind of things. That really helps make the event be successful instead of one person trying to handle everything. Another thing that I recommend is create a specific communication plan, so that okay, 30 days out, we're doing this, 20 days out, we're doing this, 10 days out, we're doing this. And you need to advertise that event all over social media, emails, text message, use all your communication tools, and then have a plan for when those are going to go out to make sure it's very comprehensive. A lot of people think, oh, everybody knows. I'll just send a couple of emails, one or two emails, that'll get everybody there. Well, they don't. You've got to do it over and over and over again. And then at the end of the event, track your metrics and review your event progress and see how you did. Any event questions? Anybody done anything super successful on the event side? Drop that in the chat. All right, now we'll talk about product sales and spiritware, and I've combined these two together. So we're talking about anytime you sell something and you might get a percentage of what's sold. So that'd be anything from chocolate to mattresses to mulch to spiritware. So these are great when you have limited volunteer capacity. So if you don't have a lot of people to put something together, but you have students that can sell things, or you have one particular day that you can sell things. These fundraisers do well. These are not the highest performing fundraisers of all. Events and peer-to-peer do better, but there's sometimes that these you need these. So you have other fundraisers doing the heavy lifting, maybe your big two fundraisers, and then you're doing this stuff in the background. If you do these right, they shouldn't have any logistics to manage. So try to pick a vendor where you're not having to actually deliver the things, or do a whole lot. Sometimes like the mulch can get pretty complicated with a lot of deliveries and things like that. And these help get money from outside of your family base. So that's really the idea. The peer-to-peer also do that. We find on events, it's almost always your families that participate, and then maybe you get a few outside sponsors. But product sales and spiritware and peer-to-peer fundraisers really help broaden your donor base. So things you want to think about. When you're looking at what to sell, you want to look at your profit per item sold. If you're doing chocolate, for example, it can be pretty low. But if you don't have to put much time into it, then it may be worthwhile to have it run in the background. Your profit margin percentage, perhaps if you are selling your own spiritware, how much you're making on it. The volunteer hours required. So I highly recommend, like if you're doing spiritware, to try to do a print on demand service that delivers directly to the customer instead of stocking and inventorying spiritware, which can require not only a lot of volunteer hours, but can potentially cause you to lose money. And think about how much communication currency is required. How many times do we have to remind a parent to do this, to buy this, to sell this? And if it's a lot, you may not want to use that communication currency on this type of fundraiser because it doesn't have a huge return. So we'll look into the numbers on here. So now this one's specifically a spiritware fundraising calculator. I think if you sell other products or do meal nights, okay, that's a, 20% return. Those are pretty easy to figure out. But one of the things about spiritware that I like to caution on, it's probably one of the biggest places that we see that booster clubs lose money. So oftentimes you get excited, okay, we're going to buy some t-shirts for $10. We're going to sell them for 20. Our total revenue is 2,000. We're going to make $1,000 profit. That's going to be great. What ends up happening is we order 100 shirts, we sell 21. We get $420 and we actually end up losing $580. And so you want to be real careful with spiritware. If you're going to inventory it, it's going to require a dedicated volunteer to track that. And I'll tell you, a lot of booster clubs don't see this because what happens is you might buy those t-shirts last year, so the expenses on last year's budget, and then you sell some of them this year, so everyone gets excited. Oh, we've got some income from the spiritware, we're doing well, but that expense was actually in the year before, so nobody sees that you lost money on this. And I see, Sal, yeah, you had spiritware 6 years to get rid of, and then you try to sell it as vintage, which nobody wants the 2022 shirt. They just don't. So be careful if you're doing spiritware for that reason. If you use a print on demand service, it's like what we have with Booster Hub merch, where you make money on each item. It's more like you're making a percentage sold. That's better because you're always profitable. And again, this can have low volunteer hours, but the return is pretty low. And then you have that risk of potentially losing money. So be careful when you're selling spiritware. If you are going to do spiritware, I definitely recommend to keep your product selection simple. We get people who design 25 different products, and even if you're doing print on demand where you don't have to inventory all that, it's confusing to the buyer. So if you keep it simple, if you are going to do a collection, maybe keep it to like 10 items or less. Consider doing print on demand. If you don't know what that is, that's when you can post the t-shirt for sale on your website. And if somebody buys it, it then ships directly to them and you don't touch it and you don't have to inventory it and you don't have to count it. And this is really important if your volunteer time is limited. And then be sure if you're selling that you're putting those product links in all your communications. So if you're, oh, sorry, let me go back here. If your band director is sending out a weekly, this is what we're doing this week, put your spiritware link in there. So you're promoting that product. It helps keep down on the total currency, communication currency, but gets a lot of promotion for those products. What's your Yeah, so Robert, yeah, I see print on demand with the lower profit margins. It depends on who you're using. That's one of the things we did with Booster Hub merch is our print on demand is about the same cost as if you buy in bulk, regular. So we were able to get, t-shirts down in the $7 and $8 range so you can sell them for 20 and kind of get that 100% return on it. So, but agreed, you have to be careful there for sure. Some of the print on demands are down to 15 or 20% profit share, and that's all you make. So you want to definitely look at the different vendors and see what the options are. Most of the stuff on Booster Hub merch we offer, you can usually double the cost, and sell it for at least that. There some more expensive items like high-end quarter zips and things you can't, but most of the items you can sell for double the cost. Now let's talk about peer-to-peer digital campaigns. This is really the most effective fundraising that we see at Booster Hub. We have Booster Bucks, which is our peer-to-peer campaign tool. I don't say that just because we have it. It's just the most efficient way to fundraise right now in booster clubs. And there may come a time where this doesn't work really well, but right now it works really, really well. And from a volunteer perspective, it's absolutely the best return on investment. So this is, again, if you can have your students participate, they'll each set up their own donation page under their name, and it'll say, Sarah Smith is raising money for the band boosters. And then Sarah will add 10 or 20 of her family and friends to donate to her page. So the first thing it does is it really helps you get beyond your immediate community to push some of the fundraising needs outside of your families that you have. It's great when there's a great story, and particularly if you can get the students to set up their own pages. You can do this with just one main fundraising page and share it a lot. That works. But if you've got the compelling story, your district allows you to have the students do the fundraising. It's a really, really good option. You have to have social media savvy supporters. Most grandparents now can figure out how to donate through a link or something like that. So that's not as important. It's really the quickest way to fundraise. You can run these campaigns for 1 to 2 weeks, and we have many booster clubs that raise, $30, $40, $50,000 in a couple of weeks. And the setup time is like less than an hour. So it takes you about an hour to set it up, and then it runs in the background for a couple of weeks. And then, you net about $300 or $400 per student. It's also great if volunteers are limited because it just takes 1 to 2 hours to set up. And Robert, yeah, Zeffy's, it's a great option. They have great donation pages, and do a really good job. We always like seeing them. They're one of the better ones. There are some tools out there that can ask for tips from your donors, and those can be pretty high. So just be careful when looking at your donation platform. You want to make sure that you do it. And another thing on that, static donation pages like you find on Zephy are a little bit different than these digital campaigns. So the tools that you might use for just a standalone donation page to your program are different than what an actual peer-to-peer fundraiser are. So like Booster Bucks, for example, it's not just a static page. When your students add their contacts, the platform goes out and emails and texts those donors at specific times based on their behavior to get them to donate. And so at different times during the campaign, it might increase the frequency of those or decrease the frequency. And then it might ask a second time if the donor has come back to the page multiple times or something like that. So those are actually, I call them fundraising engines. They're actually doing a lot of the promotion for you, which is different than just a standalone donation page. So the key metrics in a peer-to-peer campaign, first of all, the number of donors per participant. So when you're setting up these peer-to-peer campaigns, the most important thing is to get your students to add contacts. So you want them to add grandma and the neighbors and perhaps their employer and the people they've babysat for. And all of those people will tend to donate $10 or $20. And so really it's the number of people that they put in that helps your campaign grow exponentially. And then you want to look at what your average donation size is. So you typically see a whole bunch of donations in the $10 to $20 range. And then you're going to see a few donations like in the $100 and $500 range, from some of those supporters. And then you're going to look at the total that was raised per participant. So generally on these type of campaigns, you should see somewhere in the $300 to $400 per student range, and then the total raised. So we'll look at a digital campaign fundraising calculator. Again, this will be in the QR code at the end. So you can see the number of participants, how many donors came in, the average raised per participant, and the total raised. If there's a platform fee for the system, you'll want to take that out. Obviously, there's a cost, and then you may have some prizes associated that helps get the students motivated to add people. And then you can see here when you look at the profit margin on these and the volunteer hours required, they're much more efficient fundraiser than we can do in events or product sales or anything like that, which I think is why they're so popular. And in the olden days, it felt like you needed to give somebody something if they were going to donate. So the gift wrap and the chocolates were all good. But nowadays people know, hey, we can't have our football program and we can't have our band program without a lot of support from our community. So I think people are just happy to just donate some money and they don't really want the gift wrap or the chocolate these days. So you'll see that here. But definitely recommend these if you haven't taken a look at any of these types of fundraising. They're a great option. Let's see here. So when you're looking at the peer-to-peer digital campaigns, again, understand the difference between a single donation page and a fundraising engine. They're really two different types of tools. You'll want to choose the smart fundraising platform. So again, the ones that go out and rally the donors for you are different than the ones that it's just a link and you have to share that link. You'll want to make sure that your students have prepared their participant list, and you'll maybe want to invite alumni or sponsors and those to participate as well. Just like the events, you want to make a communication plan so okay, we're going to kick off the fundraiser on this day. Let's get people excited about this day. Let's create a buildup. Momentum is really one of the key factors in fundraising, and it can really make the difference between a really successful event or a fundraising campaign and a really unsuccessful one. And so sometimes I see people go, okay, we're going to do this peer-to-peer fundraising deal, and we're not even going to have a kickoff. We're just going to put everybody's names in and send an email. Those do terrible because they don't have momentum. And so you really want to build some excitement up about this, tell people we're getting ready. We're going to kick off our big fundraiser, set a date for the kickoff where everybody's going to enter their contact information, perhaps get everybody in a room and have prizes for the first donation and the most donors, most contacts added, and get people really excited. Those campaigns tend to do really, really well. So we've just talked about this, some success strategies. Set goals and prizes for your top participants, the students who bring in the most contacts or get the most donations. Sometimes we do like most donations and total raised, because some students get a lot of small donations. Some students raise a lot with one or two donations. If you're going to do one of these peer-to-peer digital rallies, kick it off in person, get everybody excited. It's much better than just sending an email. And then we also recommend to have your students follow up with personal calls or emails, and let grandma know that they're going to be getting a link and they could support the band program through that link. That usually helps make it more powerful. And then promote the rally through all your communication channels, just like you would do anything else. And this is generally what you would do on a standalone donation page. So you would have this part, but you kind of miss the other parts that happen on these digital campaign rallies. And then here we just compared the fundraising options that we talked about, the events, the product sales, and the digital campaign. So, the net profit, the profit margin, volunteer hours required, profit per volunteer hour. And you can really see these digital campaigns really make a difference, which is why they're so popular right now with all the booster clubs. Be careful again on the spiritware because it can have a big negative in front of it. But events still do a great job and can build hype for your season. So that's definitely something that you want to look into. So when we're wrapping up, you want to choose the best method for what you're doing in your season. Make a strategic plan for success. Keep metrics to determine if you were successful or not, and follow up. After the event. I think that's what a lot of people miss. They get excited about planning, but let's go back and look and see how we actually did. A real biggie, keep it fun and encourage 100% participation to get everyone to participate. And you set the tone. So keep the tone of the event and the planning fun. That's going to get people excited. That's going to rally people through your community and really get them, pumped up to do this, to do the fundraiser. We have a great ebook. It's called Boost Your Fundraising. It does talk a little bit about what we talked about tonight. It is focused on the peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns, since I think those are the most efficient ones. So here's a QR code to that. You're welcome to download that and share it with your community. It's got a lot of great suggestions. It was actually written by Marcia Sray and myself. But Marcia is from one of our big band programs here in Texas and an expert. I call her the expert at peer-to-peer fundraising. So she put a lot of her stories in there and a lot of things that they found worked really well in their program. So I'll leave this up for just a minute so everybody can grab that. Any questions? I feel like I raced through things tonight. I'm about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Does anybody have anything exciting they're working on in the Booster Club right now? I know it's kind of turnover season. Get ready. Those of us that are ahead are already planning for August. And then we have the people that'll call us in late July that want to kick off things by August 1st. We have a lot of those. All right, we'll jump over here. So I've got the QR code up here for the fundraising calculator. So you can see there's, I think, 3 pages in there: events, product sales, and peer-to-peer. Robert, peer-to-peer platforms. I'm, of course, partial to Booster Bucks if you're on Booster Hub, but if you're not, there's a lot of great ones. Team Fund, Vertical Raise are good. Snap Raise is really the traditional one. It has the highest fees, so something you may want to, just look at and see if it has that much return. So those are some of the best options out there. And Tal, you're doing car wash this Saturday and then planning an event in August. Yep, it's definitely fundraising season, and August, we're all getting ready for August. So we've got that calculator there on that link. If you're not a Booster Hub subscriber, we have a QR code here for $50 off your annual subscription. If you already are a Booster Hub subscriber, if you send us a referral, you can just drop those to me, Robin at boosterhub.com. And we'll put $100 donation to your club if your referral signs up. So we welcome those referrals. A lot of our business comes from that, and we appreciate you letting other clubs know that you're with Booster Hub and that it's working for you and sharing that information. Any other questions? Doing $1,000 Amazon gift card raffle, pulling it next week. Nice. On track to raise over 7,000. That's awesome. Sal, how are you doing the raffle? Do you have a tool that you're using, or are you doing it online? Are you doing pledges or having people pay with a link? Traditional raffle tickets in person. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's hard to beat person to person fundraising. I think that's why the peer-to-peers do so well, because they simulate that in a world where we're all overscheduled and busy. It still allows you to do a little bit of that personal fundraising that's much harder to do these days, given the schedules that our kids keep in our time. Any other questions this evening? Love that. How long have you been running that Amazon rally? Since March. Okay, since March. I see it there. So about 2 months. Yep. That's awesome. All right. Well, I'll hang out here for a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, we will send this out to all of you that were on the webinar tonight. So you'll have a link to the recorded version. If you ever have any questions, Booster Club related, feel free to reach out to our team, whether you're a Booster Hub subscriber or not. We're always happy to help. We work with thousands of Booster Club volunteers all the time. So we've got a lot of feedback. We've seen a lot. We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So for sure, mostly the good, mostly the good. And we appreciate all of you and all the time that you put into your booster clubs and supporting your students' programs. We know how much work it is, and I close every session with that, but we really mean it. We know how much time that it's 8 o'clock here on a Wednesday evening, and you're all watching a webinar about how to raise more money for your program. So we appreciate you and appreciate all you do for the students. We'll hang out for a few more minutes. Thanks, Robert. Welcome you. And if you're like to set up a demo, we've got great live demos of Booster Hub too. Our team does a great job, can answer your questions. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for joining us. Right. Hi, Nikki. Thanks. Let us know if you have any questions getting started on Booster Hub. Um, Val, I'll leave it to you and see if anyone has used Booster Hub merch. We find generally the t-shirts, hats, stickers, hoodies, those are generally